Fan McGill, editor with Bear Insider, here with your favorite guest on our awesome Ultimate Insider podcast, Cal Hall of Fame quarterback, Cal broadcaster, and former NFL quarterback and pro quarterback, Mike Pawlawski. Mike, great to have you here, and we're here for a special cause today. I want to talk about your book that's heading for release really soon.
Oh, thanks, Jim. Always great to be here. Great to be with Bear Insider and the Cal family, always.
So, Mike, your book is called Everyday Great, and can't wait to have it in Cal fans' hands and for me to devour the rest of it myself. But wanted to talk about a little bit of your background as an athlete and what provided you the motivation for writing the book. Before we dive into some of the background on your athletic career and what your overall thought process was behind the book, what was it that kind of drove you to put the pen to paper and share some of the insights you've gleaned over your career over all these years?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. It's one, when I was talking to a buddy of mine, I was telling him, he saw some of my Facebook posts about a year ago. He's like, man, something's really kind of changed in you. What's going on? And I said, I kind of figured out that I really love coaching and helping people. Like, I really, really love that. And he goes, what do you just figured that out? He's like, you were a coach when we were kids. You would help me. Like, you would coach me on stuff. You taught me how to fly fish. You helped me with football. Like, you used to coach when we were young. And so if that's new to you, that's pretty funny. But I have my entire life always enjoyed giving back to people in a way that helps them to be better, emotionally, physically, like helping young athletes become better athletes, helping them develop better mindset traits, helping people to get through problems. Because oftentimes you don't see from the inside, how the problem affects you and where your thinking is wrong. I love helping people get answers to kind of common life problems. And so I thought, with my history as an athlete and everything that I've learned from some great coaches along the way, not to mention my experience, working through being the underdog, becoming a Pac-10 co-offensive player of the year, going on, getting cut several times, and then going on to win a world championship in the Arena Football League and becoming an all-league player. Like, there's things that you do to overcome adversity in your life, and we all face adversity. But my idea was, as a coach, to give that back through stories that people could learn from.
That makes sense. People are always interested in a deeper dive into some of their favorite Cal athletes over the years and kind of what makes them tick. And I've had some fun conversations with you on the plane over the years on the way out to road games and about just your competitive fire as a kid before you got to Cal. Can you talk a little bit about how you started in athletics and what instilled the passion in you to be a leader out there and to get every ounce out of your body that you could?
Absolutely. And that's one of the main chapters in the book. Early on, you'll find out. When I was young, I was actually born with lung disease. And it was later diagnosed, like way later, like 1994, that it was cystic fibrosis. And
wow.
I used to have pneumonia every single year as a kid. I would be sick. Oftentimes I would end up in the hospital. On several occasions, it was dire. And I talk about in the book a time when doctors told my mother, if he makes it through the night, he'll probably be okay. And so it was to that point with me breathing as a kid that kind of left me in this position where my parents were trying to figure out how to make me stronger, how to improve the condition, because they were doing everything they could do to protect me, right? And then they'd take me to the hospital and doctors and allergy shots and everything else. But that trip to the hospital, one of the doctors told my parents, hey, you might think about putting him in sports to help him strengthen his lungs. And
well, that would make sense.
Yeah, and they were going to do it anyway, but I was able to get into sports because my parents were there. And so they put me in every single sport from football, baseball, basketball, soccer, track and field, swimming, like anything that they could, they put me into it. And so
did you love them all?
I loved most of them at the time. I was decent at most of them, but I excelled at a few. Right, baseball. Well, I was obviously a very good player in high school, good enough that college scouts and college coaches were talking about potentially giving me joint scholarships or split scholarships. And then in football, obviously I loved football. That was my passion. And I was very good at soccer before I found football. So those three sports were really the ones that I excelled in. But it was a way for me as a kid to fight for myself, right? To fight off that disease, the lung disease, because as a kid, being in the hospital, sitting there in those hospital beds was awful. And so a way for me to ensure and control, giving myself control there, was to work hard, to breathe hard, and to learn how to breathe. And that was a big piece of it. That was that competitive fire. It started early, that I learned how to push through those things. The stories in chapter 2 of the book, but it's how the mindset started for me and how I learned to push through a lot of that stuff. Hey, Bears fans, just a quick cut in here. I forgot to mention, if you want to get on the list right now, you can text GREAT to 55444. Again, text GREAT to 55444. I'll give you announcements about the book. There'll be some backside content stuff that'll be coming to you. I'll be sending out emails on mindset and everything else all the time. I'd love to get you on that list because there'll be a ton of stuff going forward as well. But just text GREAT to 55444. You can get on that list, and I will look forward to seeing you there. And I'll make announcements when the book come out. I appreciate your support.
When did you know you might really have something, when you were starting to stand out amongst your peers at a younger age?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't know that there was a point where I'm like, ooh, yeah, there's, like scholarship. That wasn't even a thought back then, at least not for me. I didn't think about scholarships until I got my first recruiting letter from Washington State. Now, I knew as an athlete that I was always a little better than the people around me. In soccer, I was one of the best players on the team always. In baseball, I was always one of the best players on the team. But baseball's so, segmented into everybody has their position, so you're better by position. And then in football, once I actually started playing, I played for a little bit. I played for 1 year, Pop Warner, but then I really got into it when I was in high school as a sophomore. And that's when I thought, ooh, I'm decent at this. I can get better at this. And then finally I get that recruiting letter going into my senior year from Washington State, like I said. And all of a sudden the recruiting letter started. And that's when I thought, oh, well, I could probably go to college on this, right? So then I got several trips offered and came down to 4 schools.
So what brought you to Cal? What was the deciding factor there?
I love the fact, and this story is also in the book. There's a bunch of stories, by the way, for all the Cal fans at home. There are a bunch of stories in the book about my time spent at Cal and the lessons I learned at Cal, because the lessons are so important. And our coaching staff was really good. Bruce Snyder, Steve Mariucci, Terry Shea when I first got there, who was a great quarterback coach for a young quarterback to bring me along. But it was Bruce Snyder coming into our house. Mooch actually was my direct recruiter. He's the guy who showed up at my school. He's the guy who, had the first meeting with me and my parents. He's the guy who was kind of Johnny on the spot. But then Bruce and Terry and Mooch all came in for the closing deal. And Bruce came into our house, and we all had dinner because my parents had dinner with the recruiters every time they came in. But we sat down afterwards, and we went down to the den of the house, and Bruce looks at my parents and said, "You mind if I put this in?" And he shows them a VHS tape. And my mom's like, "No, go ahead." And he walked over and he sticks a tape that was in the VHS out, sticks his tape in, and figures out a way to make the TV work, which was always a struggle around my house at the time, figuring out how to get the VHS to work with the TV. If anybody else, lived in that area, they kind of understand what I'm saying. But he got it working like that, like no problem. And he hits play, and it's the 2-point play of a game that our team won against Valencia High School, which is down the road from us. We played them for 20 years. We hadn't beaten them. And we scored to get to 7-6 just before the final ticks of the clock. And they had 2 studs on defense. One's name was Goulet, and I forget the other guy's name, but they're both really good football players. And my coach decided to go for 2 rather than kicking the field goal and just taking the tie. And so we got down there and we ran 35 boot pass or 34 boot pass. And I got outside and all my receivers were getting mugged, or they were all shut down, or they were all kind of locked down. I was trying to buy time, find a guy that was open. And, one of these guys who went on to play D1 football kind of grabs me around the waist, and then the other guy starts swinging from my leg, and all of a sudden I see my tight end, Lenny Wagner, he's the head coach up at Santa Rosa JC, along with another Cal alum, Dante DePaula. But he sticks his hand up, and I see him, and I throw it as I'm going down, put the ball in his hand, and we win the game. 2-point play. He catches it. It's all good. Pandemonium ensues. And Bruce stops the tape, and he looks at me, and he goes, "That's the guy we're recruiting. That's the quarterback we want right there." And I was like, "Oh, like I get it. Like from right there, I got it." And so I got Bruce, what he was trying to do and his thought process from the first couple moments that I met him. I understood him. Super nice guy, but there was an intensity to him that a lot of people didn't see. And actually, a lot of my team were a little bit scared of him, which is, I guess, good for a head coach. But I was never scared of him because I understood the method of what he was trying to do. But that's how I got to Cal. And he's looking for, that fire that we were talking about from, like, talk about writing the book. I learned that as an athlete to compete. And the harder I competed and the more I beat back, the lung disease, the better I got at being an athlete, the more mental toughness I built. Kind of going through hard things made me mentally tougher.
There was a lot of greatness in all those guys, and Snyder and Mooch and Shea. What are some of the standout elements that you're able to pull from those guys and incorporate thought process?
Well, so Bruce instilled our senior year. This story, by the way, also in the book. So I'm not going to go in complete detail. I want somebody to buy the book too. But he instilled a one-at-a-time philosophy with our team. And now they call it being present, right? You're being present for everything. But the way Bruce framed it for us and the way Bruce taught the team and the way he made it kind of our motto for the year really focused up a team who was pretty good in 1990 into a team who could perform every play for that play. And it was an exceptional way of teaching it. It was an exceptional motto and slogan for that team, for that season. And that was one of the huge lessons that I took away from Bruce, was that one-at-a-time mentality, which you take the reps that are yours, you handle your business that's in front of you without worrying about everything else.
So first things first, focus on the job at hand and don't let the other extraneous things interfere with that process.
Exactly. You focus on your task and let everything else be what it is. You can only control what you can control. And so in the moment, one at a time is super important.
Now, you led the team to the first bowl game and first bowl game win in over a decade in the Copper Bowl, and that was really special to Cal fans. But what really took it to a different level was becoming one of the elite teams in the country your senior year in 1992, or 1991, excuse me, where you went 10-2, just took Clemson to the woodshed when they came in real cocky, thinking they were going to teach these California boys a lesson, and you guys didn't just win, you exerted your dominance over a big, strong, tough, traditional program. Was that one of the most special memories of your time at Cal?
Oh, for sure it was. Yeah, no doubt about it. And the huge piece of that was that I don't know if you remember 1990, but Bruce had that team for the UCLA game come walking through the stands. Remember that? When we came into the stands, it didn't feel that way. And to me, that was a way of getting the team to think about themselves differently. And he did that. He introduced that one at a time going into our senior year, 91. And he made the team think about themselves differently, different than the way Cal had been in the past, different than teams of the past, different than how we thought of ourselves as athletes in the past, right? A lot of us were under-recruited. I just saw Troy Ozine yesterday, right? And he's a guy who was totally under-recruited, ended up being a college All-American football player. And then going on to be runner-up for the Rookie of the Year in the NFL, right? So a lot of guys who ended up at Cal during that era with Bruce and Mooch and Terry and, Ollie Wilson and all the defensive staff were guys who weren't high recruits. And so he had to change the mindset on that team so that we thought differently about ourselves. I write all about it in the book. And I talk about that process that he used and how you can form your own identity, how you can change things for yourself by thinking differently about things, just taking a different perspective. We get locked into kind of this perspective of this is what it is, and I just keep following this track, and this is what happens. But instead, if you think differently, if you get yourself outside of that box, you can really change your stars. And that team did that because of the way the mindset tools that Bruce used to help us do that, not to mention all the other coaches.
Now, after that tremendous bowl win and the successful career you had at Cal, you had to make a totally different pivot, getting yourself ready for a professional career. And obviously, you're the type of driven guy where it wasn't just about the college game. It was about, squeezing every bit out of this career that you could. And you got your look at the NFL, and you had a long decade plus successful career in the Arena League. What knowledge that you had gleaned up to that point helped prepare you and help you excel at the next level?
So it's pretty funny when you look at the guys who are stars in the NFL, right? You think of these phenomenal players, and they are. The NFL's best athletes in the world. They're incredible. But then you get a guy like Brock Purdy, or you get a guy like Kurt Warner, right? Or these guys who they were either undrafted or late draftees, and all of a sudden they get in there and they start to flourish. And I will tell people there are a lot more of those guys out there than you think that just don't get their shot. I felt like one of those guys coming through Cal that I didn't get my shot, right? Ended up as an 8th round draft pick, which is kind of an after shot as a quarterback. And I think a lot of guys, that happens to you. You're not the right height. You don't have the arm strength, maybe not the foot speed, whatever it is, that coaches don't think of you as that guy. I had learned from pushing through my childhood illnesses and from not just that, but being at Cal and watching a program go from, I think Cal was 1-8-1 the year that I got recruited, and then becoming 10-2 my senior year, that I saw that if you did the work, if you focused on what you're supposed to focus on, if you had the right mindset, if you use the right tools to help yourself emotionally as much as physically, right? Because once you get the right mindset, then you can get the physical stuff right. You will do the work to get the physical stuff right. But emotionally and intellectually, if you did things the right way, then you could change your stars. You could make what you wanted to happen. And it doesn't always work out, but pushing through, you're better for the struggle regardless. And so I went to the NFL. I was cut. It's really funny. I had one of the coaches that I'd played for in the NFL. He was on the NFL team. The other day, he's like, they should have kept you. You'd have been a 12-year NFL guy, right? And so I think there's a ton of those guys out there. But if you stick to what you're doing, if you continue to process the right way, if you continue to have the right mindset, and you continue to do the work, eventually you get better and you improve and you find the skills you need and you become a better player or better whatever you do. And then when you look back, you're like, oh, that was, it was a lot of work, but there's a process to it. And that's what I write about in the book, about the process, about getting better. I think so many people these days are looking for that hack, right? What's this trick, or what's the tactic that I can use? What's this one thing that's going to change everything for me?
Shortcuts.
And the shortcuts. And throughout human history, hadn't been a lot of shortcuts. But we are incredibly adaptive as a species. And so if we push our bodies to adapt, it will. I actually introduce it in the book. It's called the High Achievers Protocol, the way I talk about it, so that people can memorize it as a mnemonic. But it helps people to understand the process of improvement, understand the process of success.
So what have you taken from your collegiate and professional career and then infused it into some of your post-athletic endeavors with your broadcasting and some of the other things that you've been involved in?
There's a lot, right? Everything we learn, we kind of take into the next steps of our lives, which is the beauty of being adaptive or being adaptable, and the beauty of, being a very cognitive animal. One of the huge pieces, which I love, was I was always, as a player, looking to refine my body, looking to refine my performance. And so I would try different things out. And if they helped, I would do them. If they didn't help, I would stop doing them. And so it was this whole trial and error issue of how do I get better? How do I improve? How do I grow as an athlete, as a person, all of these things. And so that's one of the things I took with me into everything. How can I get better at this? If I take the reps, what kind of reps do I have to take? How do I help myself? How do I improve without being able to take reps? Where can I learn from that, right? What do I have to think? What's my identity? What does that have to be? And so I was always looking to refine, improve, get better, and grow. And I think that's the biggest piece for anybody, whether you're 6 years old or whether you're 60 years old or 80 years old. As long as you're continuing to look to grow, then the human body will adapt. We have what's called neuroplasticity. Our brains will always adapt. And there, by the way, so everything I'm talking about is not just this jock, here, try harder book. I did a ton of research. There's a ton of science in this book. There's a ton of the new studies that people have been working with, the fMRI studies, that back up what you're saying. And what I did is kind of reverse engineer as a player. I said, ooh, this is what I did. And then I look at the science. I'm like, oh, that's why that worked over here. So now I tie that back to what's going on, to what I was thinking as an athlete, and then I apply it for how people can use it in their everyday life. But having the experience of doing it and then understanding why that works cognitively or why that works physiologically, putting that together to help people, I thought it's an insight that people don't get everywhere. A lot of times you'll get a jock saying, yes, you need to do this, and this is why you need to do it. Or you'll get a scientist saying, well, this study said that X, Y, and Z, and we studied these many people. But I did it first, and then I went back and figured out what process was going on to make that happen. And so I think it's a unique perspective for people at home.
So obviously, Cal fans, athletes, former athletes, they're going to get a lot out of this book. What would you say are some of the finer point elements that just your everyday person can take out of Everyday Great and say, this makes sense for me, I can apply this in my career, I can apply this in my daily life, and get more out of myself?
Well, so there's a bunch of lessons in the book about it, about how you set your identity to help you, and how actually science has shown us that setting your identity the right way won't necessarily guarantee success, but it will give you a lot better chance at achieving success. So figuring out how to set your identity is a big piece of it. The process for working through difficult times, the process for being resilient, right? Because we all face adversity. We're all going to face hard times in our life, and it's going to happen over and over and over. And so the ability to be resilient in those times, there's a process for it. I've got the science to back it up. I actually give people, I told you, the High Achievers Protocol. It is a fully encompassed concept on how the human body adapts, how you improve, how you achieve, but it also gives you a little cheat in the fact that you can use it as a countdown. Like when you're feeling hesitant, when you're like, I don't really want to go, or I don't want to make this call. And we all have this moment when we're holding ourselves back. We're like, I really don't want to go face this meeting, or I don't want to raise my hand with my idea. This gives you an opportunity to count yourself down so that you can say, nope, I'm doing it right now, and to act. And a lot of the time, if we would just act, it would change things for us. And rather than holding ourselves back, rather than staying inside of ourselves, I give you a tool, a process for helping yourself act when the moment strikes.
So you're giving people the confidence to take that knowledge and apply it, knowing that there's background to it. It's not just a hunch I have. If I do it this way, I'm going to get some success, but this is a proven set of hypotheses that I can really apply to my business world and my personal life and my relationships, and just take it to a higher level.
Yeah, I tell them this. I teach you the science behind why it is that we don't do the things, why it is that we hold ourselves back, why it is that we kind of won't put ourselves out there and take those chances that we know can win, and why we get so nervous about them, or why we freeze, for lack of a better term, when we could act. And then I give you the tools. So once you understand that, once you understand the biology of that, it's a lot easier to understand the tools that you use and to overcome it. And so that's the important part for me as an athlete. You think about it, I literally start the book in the tunnel with my team in the Arena Bowl. So when we're playing, going into our first Arena Bowl championship, I start the book, the very first chapter, you are in the tunnel with me, first word right out of the gate. And you get to literally feel what it's like to be a player getting ready to go on the biggest stage that you've been on, right? This is in front of millions of people at home on ABC. It's for the championship, for what you've worked for all year long. And so everything that's going on with the human biological stress response, and everything that's going on inside guys' minds, and what it's like to, step through the tunnel, and all those things, I start you there, and I explain throughout the course of the book how the human stress response affects you, how your physiology affects what you do, and how you can apply that to any position, any job, any time, and how you can handle stress better in your life. I actually, so Urban Meyer and I did a fly fishing retreat together. And by the way, anybody who is interested in doing something like that next year, just leave me a message down below, and there may be spots. But it's a fantastic fly fishing retreat. He was reading the book on the way home, and he kept texting me. He's like, "Wow, you brought people into the tunnel, and wow, that grizzly bear story took my breath away." And like, he just kept texting me, over and over as he's reading the book. And so I love storytelling, as you know, you listen to me speak all the time. I love telling stories, and I love telling immersive stories that bring people emotionally to that point with you. And so the stories, I did my best to tell the stories that will emotionally get you where the athletes are and get you to understand the lesson, because the human brain encodes lessons in stories, right? That's how we remember these lessons, is through the stories that we've lived or through the stories that we've seen. And so I try to tell great stories and then give you the lessons and the science on the backside to help you understand how to get more from yourself.
Well, I can't wait for a broader audience to be exposed to your thoughts and your stories. And, you know as well as anybody else, you don't get anywhere staying in your comfort zone. And you're giving some really practical input on exactly how to get out of your comfort zone in a productive way that's going to benefit you big time, because comfort zone gets you comfort and not a lot else. No risk, no gain.
Yeah, and the comfort zone eventually gets uncomfortable too, right? Because then you're thinking, oh, well, I didn't do the things, and then you start putting pressure on yourself, and you feel unfulfilled, right? I talk about in the book how to achieve that ultimate fulfillment, and there's a combination, and there's a mix of how you find that between challenge and connection, and then safety, and like they're all mixed in, but you have to find that for yourself. But there's tools that you can use, and there's a mindset that will get you there.
And when does your book go into print, or is it in print already?
So the Kindle version, is available right now. Kindle version is ready to go. But October 10th is when the book goes to print at Amazon. You can get it on Amazon. You just, when you go into Amazon, type in "Everyday Great Book," and it will literally take you to the book. And I can put a link down below as soon as it comes up as well. But what I would love is for Cal fans to help me become a bestseller, right? All of our Bear Insiders. I would love to be a best-selling author along with everything else that I've done. It'd be fantastic. And so the way Amazon does it is if people go out and buy an early surge of books right away, then it becomes one of those books they recommend. And once they start recommending it, because the algorithm is telling them this book has a lot of attention, they start pushing it. And once you start pushing it, that's the way you can become a bestseller. The other way is when people are giving reviews. So when the book comes up, if you buy it and just give me a quick, honest review on the book, I would love that, because that will help me kind of climb the charts as a bestseller.
Well, you got a lot of big fans out there. I know you're going to see a lot of support, and we'd love to see you break through to a broader audience too, to let people know what makes you tick, what's made you great, and what makes Cal great too. We all know that's the case too.
Oh, no doubt about it. Yeah, and it's in the book. I talk about it in the book too, about how great it is at Cal, how great it was to learn at Cal, and all the lessons, not just the lessons, but really the people there too, right? My Cal family has been sensational since I left Cal, since I got there, really, but since I left Cal too, my Cal family has been sensational. And so I talk about that and about how great it is to be part of the University of California.
That's awesome. Well, it's been great to talk about a little bit something different this week, and we'll be looking forward to your upcoming podcast breaking down the upcoming big game day, Miami Cal game Saturday night, and looking forward to your insights and what we're going to see on the field on Saturday too. But thanks for taking the time to talk.
Absolutely, brother. I appreciate you coming on. Appreciate you talking about my book like this. And Bears fans, I hope you enjoy the book more than anything. I hope you enjoy the book. I think it can make a difference. There's some lessons in there that you guys will love, and there's a ton of great stories from behind the scenes that you guys will love as well. So thanks, Jim.
Awesome. Thanks. Well, it's been a great Ultimate Insider podcast. Thanks, Mike, and thanks to all you Cal fans. We'll be talking to you soon, and make those orders as fast as possible.
That's right. Go Bears. Let's do it.